On April 11, 1968, against the backdrop of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in the Vietnam War, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968 into law.
It proclaims that fair housing for all human beings who live in this country is now a part of the American way of life.
Within this landmark legislation, Title VIII made it illegal to discriminate in the terms, conditions, or privileges of sale of a dwelling because of race or national origin, among other identities. These provisions are commonly referred to as the Fair Housing Act. The Act's two main goals were to prevent discrimination from occurring and foster integration. While housing discrimination has declined to a certain extent, these goals haven't been entirely achieved. This weekend foundation, created by the Act's limited basis for preventing housing discrimination, has led to unequal development of wealth, educational inequality, and health disparities for POC. The widespread beginning of racial segregation and housing discrimination in America can arguably be traced back to the FHA's practice of redlining. Redlining was the practice of refusing to insure mortgages in and near African American neighborhoods. The FHA's act of discrimination may well be in the past, but the effects and harmful nature of redlining still persist to this day.
So the seeds were planted and they had enough time to grow and to become a large oak, right? The fruits of it we're still seeing to this day.
Today, more subtle methods of discrimination still persist that have a wide variety of impact.
You don't necessarily have to wear white hoods and tote tiki torches in order to discriminate against Black and brown people. Many of the practices and policies that we currently live with do that without anyone batting an eye.
Homeownership and affordable housing are crucial tools for building and maintaining wealth and achieving financial stability.
For American families, home ownership remains the principal means of building wealth.
For many families, their home is their greatest investment, their largest asset, and the asset most likely to appreciate in value and therefore increase their net worth. It is through home ownership that families realize an appreciated value and over time can pass the value of that appreciation from generation to generation.
However, current and historic discrimination contribute to racial differences in wealth, especially between Black and white people. This wealth gap affects many aspects of life, such as savings and generational wealth.
The median household income of a white family is $83,722 compared to $28,105 for a Black family.
That's not but because of bootstrapping and savings. A lot of that is a result of a policy that denied Black people the opportunity to build wealth.
Along with influencing wealth, housing discrimination also affects education. It is largely true that schools are still segregated by race, with 2/3 of minority students still attending schools that are predominantly minority. And as a result of racial cycles of poverty, these schools tend to have populations of low-income students.
Housing and education are deeply interconnected. I would say to folks, housing policy is education policy, because in the United States, it is still largely true that where you go to school is determined by the neighborhood where you live. And so if you live in a community where there are very high concentrations of poverty, you're almost certain to attend a school with very high concentrations of poverty. And because of how our politics works, we often underinvest in those schools. So those schools have overwhelming challenges and not enough resources to address them.
Another area that housing influences is health. Having access to quality healthcare and living in an area that will not negatively affect health is crucial in securing the safety of one's family. However, there are housing barriers in place that make this difficult for families of color.
Residential neighborhoods are responsible for all of the social determinants of health. Access to good food, access to good recreational space, access to clean air or clean water because you are located either proximately or far away from pollution sources. Access to housing that is free from pest infestation, structural defects, lack of heat, mold, or other health hazards is distributed by race so long as the legacy of redlining and racial segregation remain.
With the still visible history of inequity and so many issues still ongoing today, it is hard to know how to properly tackle the problem of housing inequity and discrimination. However, fully enforcing the Fair Housing Act and implementing more rules is a good place to start, as well as creating more inclusionary zoning policies and affordable housing to try and better achieve integration and equality.
Policies in which we would stop doing some of the negative things that we had been doing does not make the consequences of the past go away.
The federal government owes it to everyone, especially to the POC most affected by this discrimination, to create and enforce change that will uphold the all men are created equal doctrine ingrained in the foundation of our country.
There's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. If you're growing a head of lettuce and it's not growing, you don't blame the lettuce. You look to see if it's getting sunlight. When we look at Black communities and neighborhoods, we blame the lettuce.